Hey, thank you. It's just an honor to be here. I was here several years ago. It's a thrill to come back, and I love CCV. I love what you guys are doing. I want to welcome everybody here, everybody watching outside, everybody watching at all of our campuses. We're so glad that you are with us. And I've been a big fan of CCV and Pastor Jeff for many, many years. His book, Dinner with Skeptics, is so good. It's required reading in our house, and so we're making our kids read it, and they're loving it. And it's really, really helpful to pass out to people as well. And I'm excited to read his new book as well that he's written. It's going to be great. And so Jeff and I have known each other for a while, as well as Pastor Mike Bro, who you guys know, and Pastor Gene Apple from Eastside. And we've been friends for a long time. And Gene's down at Eastside in Anaheim, and I get to be at Real Life Church in Valencia, California. If you don't know where that is, Magic Mountain. Okay, so there we go. That's where I am. And then Mike travels around to speak at all three of our churches, which is so fun. And so I want to explain to you why I'm wearing a bowling shirt, okay? Because I've gotten some odd looks out there, outside. Is that typical? And it does, do I just do that when I go speak somewhere else so you know my name? No. Not necessarily. This is all part of a theme that the four of us pastors wanted to put together for this series. And they're supposed to wear their bowling shirt when they're here as well. And so if they don't, you let them know, okay? But here's what we came up with. Several months ago, we sat down over lunch and said, what if we did a series where all four of us wrote one message and we traveled around to each other's churches and presented it and be a way that we could all be part of the same series together. That'd be a lot of fun. Let's do that. And so we came up with this idea of Let It Go. Has nothing to do with the song from Frozen, okay? I will not be singing that, nor will anybody else. But it has to do with this idea of bowling. And so here's kind of what it is. There's really two kinds of bowlers, all right? Now, the first kind are the kind that take it serious. They're the people that do have their own shirt and their own shoes and their own bowling ball with their initials on it. They use the fan while they wait for the ball to come up, and they have a little wrist guard and they kick it out, when they do their bowling. And they're very, very serious. Do we have any of those bowlers? By show of applause, how many of you bowl like that? Okay, there we go. One brave person has admitted to it. The rest aren't here because they're bowling. All right, so there's a second group of people. There's a second group of people that they don't really consider themselves bowlers, but they bowl because they just ended up there, It's a birthday party, or everybody said, let's go bowling. All right, whatever. And so they get the lightest ball. They throw it as hard as they can, or they use that little ramp thing and roll it down. And they buy nachos and pizza and just hang out with everybody. That's the kind of bowler they are. By show of applause, at all of our campuses, how many are that? Okay. Good. Well, that's the kind of bowler I am as well. It's just kind of, if we're there, fine. But here's the thing. Whether you're a bowler that takes it serious or one that doesn't take it serious, the same principle is true for every single one of us. And that is when you approach the lane and get to that line, you have to let it go. You have to let it go. You cannot hold on to that ball. Now, the reality is that is a big principle for so many of us in our life because we deal with let it go scenarios all the time. I'll give you an example. In our home, we have a constant argument about this. How long can food stay in the refrigerator? I grew up in a situation where we ate leftovers, and we ate them till they were gone. And if we wanted new food, we had to eat the old food, okay? That was the way we lived. And because of that, I can let stuff sit in the fridge for weeks, all right? Because the microwave kills everything that's wrong with it. It'll be fine. My wife doesn't share that idea. And so many times I'll see her rummaging through the fridge, cleaning it out or whatever, and she'll pull something out and go, what is this? And I'll say, I think that's chili. Really? From when? February? I don't know, And she looks at me and says this phrase, let it go. And she throws it away, Some of us have that with food. A lot of us have that with sports. If you're a big sports fan and you're a diehard fan of your team, it's hard to let it go when somebody else beats your team. Now, I'm fiercely loyal when it comes to my sports teams. And if your team beats my team, I not only dislike your team, I might dislike you. All right? And so... with that comes it's kind of a curse, right? Because you live with these grudges against teams throughout the years. And back in the mid-'80s, I was living in Kansas. That's where I grew up. And even though I was in Kansas, I was a diehard Laker fan, all right? And which is just God's gift that I get to live out here now. But anyway, I was this big Laker fan, loved the Lakers, watched every Laker game that I could possibly see in Kansas. And I remember 1986. They were in the Western Conference Finals. They were playing the Houston Rockets. They were down 3-1. It was a must-win game at the Forum. They were up by 1 point with 1 second left. We have the video. This is what happened. And it was so difficult for me. I think we're going to roll the video here, maybe. There it is. This was so difficult because the Rockets threw the ball into that individual there, Ralph Sampson, and it rolled in, and the Lakers lost. I remember where I was. I remember how I felt. And I began a strong dislike for Ralph Sampson. Fast forward 25 years. I'm preaching at our church in Valencia, real life church. I get done with the service. I walk out in the lobby shaking hands, and I look across the lobby. He's hard to miss. He's 7'4", Ralph Sampson. I kid you not. I thought, this is unbelievable. I walked over to Ralph Sampson, and what did I say? Did I say, hey, welcome to real life, really great to have you here? Did I say, do you know our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? No, I said, I am still not over what you did to the Lakers 25 years ago. And you know what he said? He looked at me, he started laughing, and he said, let it go, kid, let it go. But somehow I felt better having said it, you know? Now, whether it's sports or food or whatever, we all have these things that we carry along with us, and most of the time, it hurts us, especially in relationships. Many of us are kind of dragging some bowling ball of something into every relationship we're in, and we're arguing with people in our relationships, and it's not even their problem, it's somebody else's we've carried into the relationship. In fact, many doctors are telling us that many of the illnesses we suffer from today are traced back to emotional issues we've not let go of. In fact, some scientists are saying that bitterness actually targets the liver. And many doctors are saying that 80% of the patients in hospitals today are there because of guilt-related issues that began as an emotional thing that turned into a physical thing. In other words, we are literally killing ourselves from the inside out. And we got to learn how to let it go. So here's what we want to do as these 4 pastors is we want to each tackle one issue that really is something we should let go. We're going to talk about anxiety. We're going to talk about fear. We're going to talk about shame. And today I'm going to talk to you about envy. Envy is that little 4-letter word that kind of sums up the curse of comparison. Now, I'm sure that every single one of us in here and everybody watching at our campuses has had an experience where you felt a little bit envious of somebody else. Do you know when it began for you? Because I know when it began for me. 6th grade, Christmas break, I open up one of my gifts, and it was a sweater. Now, normally kids aren't all that excited about sweaters, but I was 6th grade. I was very interested in girls, and this one particular girl wanted to get her attention, and I thought this sweater would be great, and here's why, because it was bright green. You think that's crazy? It's the 80s, friends. You pair that with a pink shirt underneath, you're totally awesome, all right? So here's the great thing about the green sweater. It's not just a green sweater. It's got a little alligator on it. That's an Izod, friends. And I was thinking, this is styling. I cannot wait. Cannot wait for school to come back. And school came back, and I rolled into the junior high, with the pink shirt underneath, collar up, of course, the Izod green sweater on, strolling through the hallways. And I'm ready for girls to start dropping their books and staring. And, oh, there he is. Look at him. Oh, my. And they look for a moment until somebody walks in from the other door. Greg Williams. I remember his name. And he's got a new sweater on as well, but his is a polo. And polo outranks the Izod. And everybody stopped and stared at Greg. Oh, Greg, look at your sweater. Oh, that's so cool. You look so great. Totally rad, or whatever we were saying then. And suddenly at that moment, I knew what envy was all about. And it's subtle, and it sneaks up on you. I like the way that Pastor Craig Rochelle says this. He says, the quickest way to kill something special is to compare it to something else. You think about it. I loved that sweater until I saw a better one. And you know what that's like, don't you? Some of you have remodeled your kitchen. You spent thousands of dollars. It took you weeks. You lived and ate out of the garage while it was going on. And now it's done, and it's glorious, and it's wonderful until you went to a friend's house. And it looks like Joanna Gaines has been living there. You know, there's shiplap all over the walls, and it's just beautiful. You come home and say, we got to start all over. What are you talking about? We just got it done. But you know the quickest way to kill something special to you is to compare it to something else. Some of you are like that with cars. You saved up and saved up and saved up, and you're able to get a Mercedes C-Class. You drive that home, and it's great until your neighbor comes home in the S-Class. Now you put a for sale sign in your car. It's a piece of junk. We got to get rid of it now. Because the quickest way to kill something special to you is to compare it to something else. And we have never lived in a period of time when it's more easy to compare yourself to somebody else than right now. Thanks to the beauty of Instagram and Facebook, we can see what everybody else is doing and compare it to ourselves. You ever been having a good day till you get on Facebook or you get on Instagram and you're looking at it and you go, hey, those are all my friends having lunch. Why am I not there with them? How did I not get that invite, you know? And you say something like, oh, that sounds like fun, and about a bunch of emojis and everything, and just trying to convey your frustration. Or maybe you're looking at Instagram one day and you say, oh, she's on her second vacation of the year already. You can't afford to go to grandma's house, and she's on her second cruise, you know? And, oh, goodness. Or this is the best, is when they take a picture of holding the book by the pool with their feet in it, that shot. I don't even know how you pull that off, but somebody does that, and you're looking at that going, you know what? I hate that pool. I hate that book. I hate your feet, Because everything was great until you saw what they were living in, how they were living. And the problem with that is it just slowly and subtly creeps into our life. I heard one pastor say that when we look at these images, it's like we're comparing their highlight reel with our blooper reel, because we know what the behind the scenes looks like. And we compare it to them and we think they've got it good and we don't. Now you would think that this is only a problem we deal with, right? And when you come to the scriptures, you come to the Bible, you think, oh, there's no way they would understand that. But they did. In fact, in the very first century, the Apostle Paul writes a letter to the Corinthians, and he hints at this idea. Take a look at what he says here, 2 Corinthians chapter 10. He says, oh, don't worry. We wouldn't dare say that we are as wonderful as these other men who tell you how important they are, but they are only comparing themselves with each other, using themselves as the standard of measurement. Look what he says about that. How ignorant. He says, when you simply compare yourself to other people, you are looking in the wrong place. Because here's what happens. When you and I compare ourselves to other people, one of two things is inevitable. We will either feel superior or we will feel inferior. Neither of those glorify God. Some of us will feel superior. You won't say it, and I won't say it, but we'll think it. We'll look at somebody else and we'll go, must not be living right. Must not work very hard. I'm sure God loves them, but he hasn't blessed them like he has me. And there's something in our mind that makes us think that we've done this all ourselves and we feel superior to them. The other way is what most of us do, we feel inferior to them. And envy and jealousy set in, and we begin to look at them and wonder, why do they have it so good? Why are they blessed in that way? Why does everybody notice them? Why, when I put something on social media, nobody likes it, but everybody likes what she puts on? Why is that? And we just go on and on. Pastor Andy Stanley says, most of us want to live in the land of E-R. We just want to be a little richer, better, prettier. And then after we live there for a while, we want to move to the land of Est. We want to just be rich est, pretty est, retweeted est, whatever we can be in order to feel better about ourselves. Here's the problem. Neither one of these glorify God, and all of them rob our joy. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at a couple of guys that I think wrestled with this. And this is such a great passage we're going to read. If you have your Bible, you can open up John 20, or we'll throw it up on the screens as we go along. But this story that we're going to read, I love it because I think it's hilarious, for one. And two, it really shows us how real these people that we read about in our Bible were. In fact, this is one of the reasons I actually believe the Bible to be true, because if you're making up a religion and making up a book to go along with it, you would make everybody in there look perfect. And these people are flawed, deeply flawed. And the more you look at the scriptures, the more you realize how they're all flawed just like us, and how much we need Jesus. These two guys we're going to look at, we revere because they were disciples of Jesus, and we refer to them as apostles. There's the Apostle John, who wrote several books in the New Testament, and the Apostle Peter, who wrote a few books as well that we have in our Bible. But the letter we're going to read from today, the book we're going to read from, is written by the Apostle John. He's living this out. He's watching all this. Years later, he writes it all down. But what's fascinating about this is you can see behind the scenes there is this quiet competition going on between he and Peter. I don't think they liked each other very much, which is a little stunning. You mean disciples didn't like each other? They're human. And there was a competitive nature between the two of them. You see this a lot of times with Jesus. Who's the greatest out of all of us? Or I got to sit by Jesus at that meal. It's my turn to sit by Jesus. I called shotgun. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to be around Jesus. And there's this constant kind of, let's see who's better than each other going on. And then to top it all off, and I mean this with all respect possible, I think John might have been a little annoying. Here's why I say that. When he writes, he refers to himself in the third person. That's kind of annoying. And he doesn't say John, he doesn't say me, he says the other disciple, or he calls himself the one Jesus loved. Which I think might have been a way, if Peter reads this, I just want him to know, I'm the one Jesus loved, okay? Which is funny, kind of like how Moses wrote some of the books of the Old Testament, and in one of them he writes, Moses was the most humble man alive. That's funny. Think about that for just a second, okay? Now, John chapter 20, here's what we're going to read. Here's the situation. Jesus has been crucified. He's been in the tomb for a few days, and Mary and some other women are coming to, kind of prepare the body with some spices and oils and all that to help the embalmment process that they would do back then. It's early that Sunday morning. We now call this Easter. And these are the events. Now think about how big this is, the resurrection of Jesus. But look at the details John puts in. Here we go. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. She came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple. Which one? The one Jesus loved. And said, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they've put him. This is a big deal. The tomb is empty. And John's still letting us know he's the one Jesus loved. Look what happens next. So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. How much of a guy is this, all right? Yeah, Jesus is risen, that's cool, but I'm faster than Peter. Let's get that on the record, okay? So they get there to the door, all right, and Peter goes in first. And then John's going to go in, but he wants us to just kind of remember something. Look at verse 8. Finally, the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also went inside. Isn't this great? Had you ever seen this before? Look at this. This is fascinating to me. Now, fast forward a little bit. They eventually see Jesus. They spend some time with Jesus. And then Jesus goes away for a little bit. A few days later, they're out on the lake. They're fishing. And while they're fishing, Jesus approaches on the Sea of Galilee, kind of on the shore, but they can't see him because it's kind of far away and it's kind of, foggy in the morning and all that. And they're out there fishing, and Jesus yells out, "You caught anything?" They said, "No." He said, "Throw your nets on the other side of the boat," which is what he said before. And they catch all these fish, and then they begin to discover it's Jesus. John wants us to know who discovered it was Jesus. Look at chapter 21, verse 7. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." And as soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and he jumped into the water. Now, I don't know if John's letting us know that to let us know this is a little undignified of Peter, or that I'm faster than him on land, so now he'll try to beat me in the water. But he wants us to know that Peter goes rushing in to see Jesus because they have unfinished business. Now, this is where the story moves from being somewhat funny into being incredibly powerful. You see, the reason Peter was so excited to have a moment to talk to Jesus alone is because the last words Jesus ever heard Peter say before Jesus was crucified were the words, "I swear to you, I do not know that man." And Jesus had predicted it. He told Peter, "You're going to deny me 3 times." Peter said, "I will never deny you." Then he did. And the text tells us that they locked eyes across the courtyard where Jesus had been arrested. And then Jesus is crucified. Can you imagine being Peter and living with that? And now he finally gets a chance to see Jesus again and to just ask for forgiveness, to just apologize, to just set the record straight. And they begin this walk down the Sea of Galilee along the shore there. And they had this conversation. And we don't have all the details, but this is what we have. Jesus looks at Peter and he says, "Do you love me?" And Peter looks back at Jesus and said, "Oh, I'm so glad you asked because I've been wanting to tell you this. Of course I do. You know I love you. I'm committed to you." And Jesus says, "Feed my sheep." What does that mean? It means you take it from here. Here's the keys to what we've begun to build the church on you, just like I said years ago. They keep walking, and Jesus looks at him again, and he goes, "Hey, do you love me?" He goes, "You know I do. Absolutely. Feed my sheep." A little while later, Jesus asks him again, "Do you love me?" You catch the irony there? 3 denials, 3 questions. And Peter says, "You know that I do." This is a powerful moment as Jesus is recommissioning Peter to take over and lead this church. Look what John records next. Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. Okay, isn't that great? Peter and Jesus are having this heart-to-heart conversation, and John's lurking around behind them. You know, what are y'all talking about? You talking about me? What's going on? And look what Peter said. Peter saw him and asked, "Lord, what about him?" Isn't that great? Not, "John, what are you doing?" But, "Jesus, you asked me to feed your sheep. What's he going to do? Will it be a better job than mine? Will it be a worse job than mine? Will I lord over him because that's what I'd really like? What about him?" And the next thing that Jesus says has the power to break envy for all of us. Look what he says here. Jesus answered, "If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You follow me." Peter, if I want him to have a better job than the one I'm giving you, what is that to you? If I want him to have a lesser job than the one I'm giving you, what is that to you? If I want him to remain alive for centuries, what is that to you? Your only job is to follow me. All of us deal with somebody in our life that when we hear that they're having success or they're being blessed in a way that we're not, or everything's going roses for them, there's something inside of us that kind of cringes and thinks, "What about me? Why them?" I mean, it might be somebody in your home. It might be somebody in your workplace. It might be somebody you just know from social media. But we all have somebody. Can I let you in on a little secret? So do pastors. None of us are perfect. Pastor Jeff is close. He asked me to say that. But all of us have that. All of us struggle with that. And I can tell you who it is for me. He's a friend of mine, but he's the founding pastor of the church that I'm at now. Kyle Eidelman is the guy that started Real Life Church 18 years ago, got it going for a couple of years, and then God called him elsewhere, and then Real Life Church called me to come in and take over. I tell Kyle often, "Thank you for leaving," because I love where I get to serve. But soon after I got there, I realized that my problem with envy didn't stop with Greg Williams back in the 6th grade. It continued on. And it happened every time somebody would tell me, "Boy, Kyle was really good." And Kyle's an amazing communicator. And Kyle's an incredible author. And Kyle's an incredible pastor. And I had a lot of people that would sure let me know about that. Hey, we're really glad you're here, but have you talked to Kyle lately? How's Kyle doing? You know, when's Kyle coming to speak, you know? I thought, goodness, even from my wife, are you serious, you know? But they would constantly bring up Kyle, talk about Kyle. And I remember when Kyle was here, and Kyle did this, and Kyle did that, and that's just kind of churning inside of me. And every time I heard something cool Kyle was doing, either from the church or from somebody else, there's something inside of me just didn't set right. And that little monster of envy, I just kept feeding it and feeding it. It kept growing and growing and growing. Fast forward a few years. My wife and I go away to this pastor's retreat center where you can kind of just hang out there for like a week. It's in the mountains of Colorado. And you get together at the end of the day with other pastors and their spouses, and you have dinner together. We're sitting there, and we're having a conversation with a couple from Minnesota, and the guy looks at me, and he goes, so where's your church at? And I said, I'm in Valencia, California. And he goes, Valencia? Isn't that where Kyle Idleman planted a church? Yes. I know Kyle, yeah. Fast forward a few years from that. Okay, just this last summer, I was in Kansas City, Missouri, speaking at a church convention. I get done, I walk outside, I get in an Uber. The Uber's taking me to the hotel. He says, what brings you to town? I said, I'm speaking at this church convention here in town. Oh, yeah, I don't really go to church, but I did hear this pastor years ago. You ever heard this guy named Kyle Idleman? Yes, I've actually heard of him. And it just seems like it just keeps coming up in my life, and every time, I just sense God saying to me, what is it to you? What is it to you? How I bless him, how I use him, what I do through him, what is that to you? You see, the problem is none of us can fully follow Jesus if we're always looking for somebody else's approval or blessing. And the struggle that all of us have is the question we are going to have to eventually answer, and that is this: whose opinion matters most to you? Because some of us, we are living for the approval or the opinion of a father who's been dead for years, of a mother who will never give it, of an ex-spouse who was never going to say what you need him to say, or maybe for kids that have moved on and are not going to reconcile. And we keep living for it and living for it and living for it, and Jesus is saying to you, what is that to you? You follow me. In fact, I love what the author of Hebrews says to us, and he gives us this great metaphor of how to think through this. Take a look at what he says here in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. He says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such this great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Kyle? No. On your neighbors? No. On your mother-in-law? No. On your brother-in-law who's so successful? No. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. He says, you're running a race, but it is not against people next to you. It is just running towards Jesus. And the quickest way to lose that race is to look to the right or to the left. You look to Jesus. What is that to you, how they're running? Stay in your lane. See, what happens to us is we start looking around and we start thinking we should be more like them, or why can't God bless us like he is them? And God is saying, you stay in your lane. There might be somebody that has a bigger business than you, but you're just trying to manage your company with integrity and values. That's great. Stay in your lane. For some of you, you might be looking around at other people's homes and thinking, man, they're remodeling and everything's getting better for them and ours is really bad. But you know what? You're managing your money and you're paying off debt and you're giving to God. Stay in your lane. Some of you are looking around at other people's kids and wondering, why are they so successful and getting all these scholarships and we're struggling and our kids got all these tutors and they can't make it work. And it's okay. You're spending time with them. You're loving them. You're helping them love God. Stay in your lane. Some of us are looking around at friends. You might be single, and you're looking at them saying, man, they're having so much fun, and they're on Tinder, and they're going on trips, and they're hooking up with everybody, and you're thinking, they're just telling me how much fun it is, but you're maintaining moral purity. Stay in your lane. Because what is that to you? What's going on with somebody else? Nobody can be you, so you be you, and you stay in your lane. You might be in ministry of some sort, serving in some capacity around this church, helping out with some nonprofit, and nobody even notices. They're all talking about, somebody else's gift, somebody else's talent, somebody else on stage. And you're thinking, all I do is lead this small group of kids. Guess what? To them, you're their world. You stay in your lane. I can tell you a few things that have helped me with this. One is every now and then you got to take a break from social media, like a fast, like several days maybe, or just a day. Some of you, I'm telling you, the moment you start it, you're going to get the jitters. You're going to pick up your phone and think, what do I do with this now? Call people? I'm not going to do that. Your thumbs are going to start twitching, I'm telling you this from just personal experience. If the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is check Instagram or Facebook, you are letting their lives dictate your day. What if you started with the scriptures and let Jesus dictate your day? Just take a few days break. See what happens. Here's the second thing you can do. You can start a gratitude journal. Now, I don't mean I don't want to come off as Oprah, all right? But here's what I mean by that. Most of us are really good at counting the blessings in other people's lives. Look what they're doing. Look what's going on with them. Look what they got. What if you looked at what you have and just start writing it down? God, you've been so good. You've been so good. And then another one that I've found is really, really helpful, and that is to celebrate that person that kind of bugs you. You find a way to talk them up on social media and share their posts and be the first one to comment how great that is. Years ago, I just decided I'm just going to do that for Kyle, and every time he wrote a book, I'd go out, I'd buy it, I'd read it, I'd write him an email and said, man, the book is fantastic. I hope you sell 1 million. Still working on it, okay? Maybe at least 100, okay, that'd be fine. But I'm telling you, that simple act of celebrating somebody rather than doing the kind of the PR work of kind of bringing them down to life, just celebrate them, it breaks the power of envy in your life. So what are we going to do? You start looking around at other people, stay in your lane. You see somebody else's house, stay in your lane. See somebody else's car, stay in your lane. See somebody else's kids and what's going on with them and the blessings in their life, stay in your lane. You see somebody else's spouse, you better stay in your lane. You see somebody else's ministry and the credit they're getting, just stay in your lane. Fix your eyes on Jesus. What is it to you? What God's doing through somebody else's life, you just notice what he's doing in yours. Let's pray together. God, thank you. Thank you that you're such a big God that if we ever did turn our gaze from each other to you, we would be overwhelmed with how amazing you are, how brilliant you are, how glorious you are, and how worthy you are of all of our attention and all of our praise and all of our gratitude. And so, God, right now, as a church family, we just want to say we're fixing our eyes on you. What is it to us how you choose to use other people or what you want to do through other people and the story you're writing in them? We're going to focus on the story you're writing in us. How you want to use us to change the people in our world and to help people out, and to love people and love you. And so, God, right now, we just want to take a few moments to fix our eyes on you, because it is all about you, Jesus. And let that be our song and our cry. We pray all of this in his name.